Hello, everyone. Very warm welcome to the Sky Sports F1 podcast with me, Matt Baker. Joining me for this one in our shiny, lovely studio is David Croft.
Hello.
And Formula One content creator and podcaster Toni Cowan-Brown, alongside, via the powers of technology, in the screen over there, Karun Chandhok. Karun, hello.
Hello, it's not as shiny here. I've just found some stains from my children's yogurt. But there you go. I'm here.
Well, what an image to paint.
Lack of culture, or not, as it were.
Crofty, we'll start by talking a little bit. You can explain to the listeners or viewers why you're slightly wet.
Well, I've just got back from Spa, and I'm still a bit damp, to be honest. No, I've struggled to get here today.
Yeah.
The M1 was closed in both directions.
Yeah.
Had it not have been closed, then I would have been here an hour ago. It wouldn't have been raining. Outside this podcast studio, it is lashing down, and I'm reliably informed someone is starting to build an ark.
Yeah.
That's where we've got to this summer. Karun, fancy going on a little boat journey with us, mate? It's not going to get any better, is it?
Well, the only good news is, Coffee, it has saved England from Australia's batting, which was going quite well. That's the only upside of this rain.
If you're watching this podcast after the final Ashes test has finished and Australia have won, it's Karun Chandhok, ladies and gentlemen.
Now, welcome, Toni, because we're going to give you the privilege, as it were, of giving us your one-word race review for the Belgian Grand Prix. So go on, kick things off. One-word race review.
I had one word and I started talking with you all and I changed it.
Oh, yeah.
Fans. Only because I watched Formula E this weekend as well, and the fans got stuck in the drizzle as well. They were inside, covered, but the rain, the rain stopped the race for 90 minutes. And I don't know, I have a deep empathy of fans of motorsports just being willing to sit outside in the absolute, as it's throwing it down, and still keep that level of enthusiasm up. So weirdly, I'm going to stick with fans, actually, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. They were the proper heroes, of Spa. Isn't it nice that we went in July for the first time ever? We went to race in Spa in July, which has 1.4 millimetres less rainfall on average than August. But yet the entire rainfall for the month of August was deposited on every single day, bar Sunday. Yeah. It was appalling conditions at times. But the fans, great humour, great voice. Most of them got the result I think they wanted as well, which was a Max win. And we got some really good action when it stopped raining.
Yeah, absolutely. Go on, Karun, your one-word race review from the screen.
Can I say Piastri? I know it's a noun rather than a verb, but I thought he established himself as a star this weekend. I know Sunday didn't play out for him, but listen, it's the same thing. I go back, Michael Schumacher's Spa debut, only lasted as far as Piastri's did at the first few hundred meters. So
that's right.
But certainly a star was established, I think.
Yeah.
What were you saying?
This was my 1991 at Spa-Francorchamps was my first race when it was Michael Schumacher's debut race in what was it, the 7-Up? The Jordan Green 7-Up.
Nice.
And that what did that last two? Was that two laps, Karun?
No. He burned the clutch out coming out of La Source and stopped at the top of Eau Rouge. So he didn't even get to Les Combes on the opening lap.
But still got a drive for the rest of the season. I like that. That's a nice comparison. But that was my first ever race.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. We'll come on to talk a bit more about Piastri in a bit because I'll come on to what we're going to do in a second. Go on, you go with your one-word race review.
Well, I suppose soggy or damp,
how apt.
squelchy, but I'm just going to go Spa because it's the way you say it. Spa. We had a bit of everything, didn't we? And I think we had some great reminders as to why we love that racetrack, why it's got to be on the calendar as one of the firm favourites for drivers and for fans, and how it's so unpredictable. It challenges the engineers, even if it's not a sprint weekend, and it just threw up everything that Spa throws up. And yeah, I was grinning from ear to ear when I got on the plane to come home last night. I was grinning even more when I got home. 9:30, I got home last night.
No.
That is the quickest I've ever managed to get home after a race ever. It was 2.5 hours quicker than Silverstone.
I can only imagine.
How did you do that? Did you get a helicopter?
No, I didn't.
Because normally we are sprinting. Remember the time Simon Lazenby nearly left his bag at immigration because he was running so quickly to try and get on the last Eurostar?
Yes, that was the best dash ever. Simon Lazenby still sweating from that run. To be fair, no, we got the back roads out of Spa, got to Liège, got on a charter. with the Williams team, and landed at Luton Airport. My bags were there by the time I got through passport control, and I was back home with my other half in time to watch the highlights. It's fantastic.
Incredible. This is the side that people don't see of Formula One is us in
sprint.
airports, at sort of 2 a.m., 3 a.m. landing, way after everyone's left.
And can I say, after 12 races
Yes.
this season and 4 races in 5 weeks, never was there a better time to be home while it was still light outside.
That was your golden ticket, wasn't it?
You paid the price today with the commute this
I
morning.
came in late today.
Like you
Can't
had
win
your upside now. No.
What the Lord giveth, he taketh
Go
away.
away.
Quite. I've gone for actually the same as you, Spa, but with an R on the end.
Oh, Spa.
Ooh, what, because you're a pirate?
No, because of the great bickering between Max Verstappen and GP all weekend, his race engineer. I thought it was brilliant. I really enjoyed it, but I think it points to the position that Red Bull are in at the moment, where they're so comfortable, so easily able to work in each other's company. They're able to make decisive, good calls instantly. And I think, when you've got a relationship like that with your race engineer, I think you can win anything, can't you?
Yeah, I think that GP and Max, Giampiero Lambiase, let's give
him his full title, yes.
I think they are the best combination for each other that they could possibly have. GP is vastly experienced. He's been around the sport a long, long time. He was Paul di Resta's race engineer for many years at Force India. He takes no nonsense from Max, but understands that there will be times that his driver gets a bit hot-headed and isn't in full control of the facts and would like to make the decisions himself and would get a little bit irate when it's not quite what he envisaged. He understands, he has the patience, he absorbs it all, and he puts Max, I wouldn't say he puts him away, but he puts Max right in a way that Max respects. And there is a huge amount of respect from the pair of them. They work together superbly well. They both know each other's faults and each other's pros. And it's a seamless relationship that I know we heard a lot of it over the weekend. But that's only because it's racing. It's in the heat at the moment. These sort of things happen.
Did you hear, I was going to say, did you hear Horner call him, he's our Jason Statham equivalent?
Yes. I mean, that was very funny, but I equated back to the relationship between Sebastian Vettel and Guillaume Roquelin, Rocky as he was known, also at Red Bull. And it was similar, Crofty, wasn't it? Where it was almost like this sort of big brother, sitting on the pit wall, and then the little brother, getting all hot-headed and the adrenaline's pumping in the car and just... they bicker like siblings, but actually they're in it together. Chasing that common goal of winning races and world championships.
Doing quite well at it as well.
Rocky and Seb won 4, and these guys are well on their way to
really
their
good
third.
analogy, Casey, because Seb used to push it as well and used to go and do things that Rocky didn't want Seb to do, and Max tries the same. At the end of the day, Max respects GP enough to not push it too far. But I think they're a great combination, and I want to hear more of that over the team radio. Yeah, you have Bono and you have Lewis. What a brilliant race engineer driver combination that's been over the years. We had Shove, didn't we? And Michael Schumacher, Andrew Shovlin, and Michael Schumacher and Jenson Button was Shove, Tom Stallard, and Oscar Piastri this year, Daniel Ricciardo before. These are the people that are the connection between the driver in the cockpit who will feel vulnerable because he doesn't know all the time what the decisions are being made, and the rest of the pit wall and those with all the data at their fingertips and their mouses. So you've got to have that essential trust.
I find as a spectator, when you hear those iconic duos, it's a great reminder of how much more there is behind the driver, like the breadth of the team. I also they've been together 7 years, right? It was 26. Yeah. I love the evolution also. When you go back and listen to the team radios between the two of them way back in the day and you see how far they've come, that trust that's been built. And to your point, like that trust that goes both ways. I much rather that than what we can sometimes get of the passive aggressive, just like you don't get it and then that's the end of conversation. I'd much rather see that kind of sparring. enjoying.
Back and forth.
The back and forth, because they know where to push the limit and they know when to stop. But it's the evolution of those comms that I love. Just like you can see that relationship being built, like a true relationship being built over time.
We need to dig out some 2016, in that first few weeks when they were learning how to work with each other. We need to dig some of that out, don't we, and find out how it's changed.
It's very much like, yourself and me, Tony.
Where are we going with this?
No, when we're on air.
Where's this going?
When we're on air, we have people talking in our ears all the time. Our gallery, Matt, you've produced me. And you'll know that whatever you say to me, I just say yes and nod my head really sweetly. Karun, when you were a driver, when you were a driver, you never questioned your race engineer in the same way you never question your director or producer now.
I mean, I rarely do. I'm just seeing your nose growing by the word coming out of your mouth there, Pinocchio. But anyway, I'll let you have it.
Oh, very good.
Slander.
Right, Matt, what's our plan today? Then?
Yeah, okay. Let's move on from all these lies. Right, here we go. Coming up, because I want to use this as a bit of a way to talk about the Belgian Grand Prix, but I also kind of want it to be a mid-season review. Okay, I don't know if you saw Ted Kravitz being headmaster this week. Did a very good job of handing out grades throughout the weekend to the team. So we're not quite going to go down Ted Kravitz's headmaster route, but I think we'll try and touch on as many teams. Well, we'll touch on all of the teams, some in more detail than others. But we'll try and get through as many as possible. But look, let's start with Red Bull. And, I think it's fair to say it's been a pretty good start to the season for our Red Bull team. The biggest concern, perhaps, is that they've broken 2 trophies in 2 weeks. Might be the biggest problem.
How did they break those trophies in Belgium?
Oh, goodness
They
me.
were solid.
The second one.
Didn't the thing fall on it? I don't know what they call it.
The things that...
Thank you.
Yeah. Pitboard, there you go.
There you go. Thank you,
The
Troy.
trophies were solid. I was talking to someone about the trophies on Thursday, because the irony that we were, being swept away by rivers of rain at a race sponsored by a cruising company. The only thing that could float down Eau Rouge was one of their ships on Friday, quite frankly.
Perfect branding.
And they were saying, we've got these really solid trophies. They're brilliant. They're really, really heavy. I can't believe someone broke it.
Yeah,
I know.
It's remarkable.
Matt, I will say that the only other thing they appear to have broken is their second driver in some ways. At the start of the year, I go back to the drive he put it in Jeddah, but more importantly in Baku. Crofty and I were in the commentary box there saying he would have overtaken Max, let alone the strategy, but he would have overtaken Max on track and won that race. And it was a proper convincing performance, admittedly at one of his strongest, circuits on the calendar. But ever since he got overtaken on whatever it was, lap 41 in Miami, it's just gone away from him. And, I look at what happened even yesterday, on the weekend at Spa. Max got ahead of him and he put 22 seconds on him in 27 laps. That's a big chunk of performance to put around a track where they're spending a lot of time at full throttle driving in a straight line, essentially. And to me, that is the cause of concern. The only cause of concern at the moment in the Red Bull camp is, Max is this the 4th teammate that he's potentially broken? I mean, who can they have alongside him? Or do they just say, you know what? We don't really need anyone to be challenging him. We're happy for somebody to be half a second off the pace because our car is good enough for Max to be able to deliver at that level.
Tony, what do you make of that relationship? Do you think actually this is a very good teammate for Max Verstappen? Because ultimately he's out the way. He's not causing a problem for Verstappen, who, let's face it, is the number 1 driver at Red Bull.
I'm getting a slight feeling, sat in my comfy chair here, that Max is probably a little bored up there. I think he would probably want a teammate that can actually bring it to him. I don't know if I agree that Max is breaking his teammates, but there's something interesting there. I don't know. I keep going back and forth. I keep going back and forth on this. I keep going back and forth on he's had 4 teammates. They're not at his level. He's racing on a completely different level right now. I think he's bored, so I think he definitely wants someone, to be able to bring it to him and offer something maybe a bit more exciting for him. But I also agree with the fact that I don't think Red Bull is pushing his teammates as much right now because they don't need to. As we've seen, he's basically, bringing all the points on his own. So is there a need for a second teammate?
He could lead the constructors, couldn't he, by himself?
He is winning the constructors' championship all by himself.
All by himself.
I tend to rarely I ever say this. I tend to agree with Helmut Marko on this one, whereby Sergio's troubles started when he thought he could be a world champion.
Yeah.
And he thought he could win the world championship. And Miami, he was 6 points off Max starting on pole. And I think that broke him a little bit. And then I think the very next time in Monaco, where he crashed in Q1, absolutely broke Checo then. And I think if he returns after the summer break, I'm no psychologist, but I think if he returns after the summer break, happy to accept that he's playing second fiddle to Max Verstappen, happy to accept that second is what Red Bull need him to do, happy to accept that that's a good place to be and better than 18 other drivers on the grid, Checo will be absolutely fine. But if he harbours ambitions to be better than Max Verstappen at the moment and to beat Max Verstappen, he probably needs to start putting a bit more effort into it. Because the one thing I will say about Max, he's in the best car, yes. His team have done a superb job. And there are many, many theories out there in social media land as to why Red Bull are doing so well at the moment. I'm not interested in going down that path. But what I would say is the team and driver, Red Bull and Max, have come together beautifully. Yep. And Max behind the scenes is putting so much effort into his driving at the moment. It is no surprise he's driving so well. I mean, what do they say? The harder I try, the luckier I get. Max is at home, racing in sim racing, practicing in the sim at home, spending 5 or 6 days a week in the sim, his sim or the Red Bull sim, honing his craft, honing his skills. What does he do on his weekend off? He goes and races 24-hour sim races. He loves driving. Yeah. And the more he drives, the better he gets because he's practicing all the time. And maybe he's raising the bar to a level that other drivers kind of need to follow at the moment. So if Checo wants to beat him, got to put the effort in. I don't think he's putting that level of effort into trying to beat Max Verstappen. Yeah. That's not me having a go at Checo Perez. Yeah. I'm just actually saying you've got to raise your game and you've got to put the effort in or you get nothing back.
Is it a weird paradox, though, that to be a successful driver pairing to Max, you have to accept that you're number 2, but to be a best driver, you never accept that you're number 2 and you're in it to win it. Isn't that like it's an impossible, it feels like a weird tension.
It's the Ferrari situation, isn't it, that they had with Michael and Eddie Irvine and Rubens. You know, Rubens arrived at Ferrari in 2000 expecting to be alongside Michael and be an equal and compete against Michael, and quickly realized that wasn't going to be the case and basically spent 5 years being really frustrated. Whereas Eddie Irvine went there and knew he wasn't going to do that and thought, you know what, if I get within 3/10 of this bloke, that'll be great. And I'm going to be a Ferrari driver and life is good. And he was happy as anything, made a lot of money and is lived a happier life in that period. So I think it's about there at some point, I think, and I agree with Crofty, in Checo's situation, he's got to accept he's against one of the greatest naturally talented drivers ever to sit in a Formula One car. Listen, I think for me, the point of all of this is at the moment, it's fine, right? Max is winning the constructors by himself, blah, blah, blah. But the reality is, if Mercedes and McLaren and Aston and Ferrari do get it together and, natural order of things is we'll start to see convergence with stability of rules. That's just the way F1's always been. They will get closer. Then Max might need a support act. And then you can't have a teammate who's not made Q3 for 4 or 5 weekends in a row. And I think that's the point I'm trying to make is from Red Bull's perspective, it's not about this year. This year's done and dusted. They're going to clean it up. It's a question of when rather than if. But it's about what are they going to do for next year? And I think that's where the Ricciardo factor starts to come into play here.
Yeah, agree.
Yeah.
Checo helps sell a lot of cans of Red Bull in North America and in Latin America. He brings a lot of sponsorship money to the team, which is important, even in these cost cap times. But that is not going to save him if his results don't come up to where Red Bull want.
Especially not in Red Bull.
Exactly. And I think second at Spa, however many seconds he was beaten by Max, absolutely fine.
20.
20. Yeah, it really doesn't matter because he finished second. Red Bull had a 1-2 for the second year in a row. His performance in Hungary was a great rebound. But if he goes to Zandvoort and he doesn't make Q3 and he finishes 8th, once again, that's not where Red Bull are expecting him to be. And I don't think for all his commercial value, and he's something like 65% of all online Red Bull F1 merchandise is sold to Mexico.
Really?
Does not
Yeah?
surprise me.
Which shows the commercial value of Checo, but that's not going to save him if he's not.
It's an
doing
added
it on the track.
bonus. Not
Yeah?
yeah.
He should be in that car, and the cars are equal as well. You know, even after his crash with Lewis in the sprint race, he still had exactly the same car as Max, but he was driving it in a different way, noticeably in a different way. You know, you could tell. But he has got to finish second to his teammate if his teammate has won the race, or on occasion take his chance and beat him. And we know he can, but he's just got to realise he is a Rubens, he is an Eddie Irvine, he's not a Michael Schumacher.
Yeah.
Right. On that note, no, it's true.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's an excellent summary to segue onto team number 2.
Yeah. Well, there's one more point I want to make on Red Bull. And when we put the tweet up or the Instagram post up about this podcast, and we said we want to review the first half of the season, there were quite a few people on there who were saying, you know, well, it's been a very dull season, it's been a very boring season. How can, blah 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 blah. I'm not going to watch the rest of the year or whatever. Now, I don't agree that this has been a boring season by any stretch. I think there's been so many interesting battles. If it perhaps is a foregone conclusion that Max wins most of the races, certainly the last 8, that's going to happen. But Tony, I wonder if we can try and make the case for this not being a boring season to those people who have said that, because there is so much else going on, isn't there?
There is. I think it very much depends on how you watch motorsports and what you enjoy the most. For example, it depends on the perception that you have. If the only thing you want to see is different winners on that podium every single weekend and, a different person crossing the line, then yes, this is probably a boring season. But the reason, for example, that I got into Formula One so long ago and I've stuck with it is just the complexities of the sport, the technology, everything that's changing, the regulations. Like even looking at the tire warmers, are we banning them? Are we not banning them? Why are we banning them? How does that have an impact? What is that going to change? Like all of that, I think there's so much that the sport has to offer. But also F1 has always been, in my opinion, about the midfield battles, and there's a lot in the midfield battles for me right now that are happening that's really interesting, and it's interesting to see, how well. I know we're going to talk about this, but how well McLaren did in the first half of this weekend and wasn't able to do so well in the second half, but how far they've come from the start of the season, and similarly to Aston Martin. There's just so much going on that I think it's wrong to focus on the top 3, and I personally don't think that. I think it's actually fascinating to see how fast he is right now, him being Max Verstappen, and I think there's so much to look into that. So I don't know, I'm maybe a unique case in that, but I don't think that's true. I just think it really depends on how you approach the sport and how you look at it. And my plea would maybe be to just don't look at the top 3 podium, look more at the midfield battles, and look more at even just the evolution of this season and the sport from the first race that we had and where we are now, 12 races in. So much has changed within the sports from the shake-ups and the drivers. I have a hard time with anyone who ever says that this sport is boring or even just the race is boring. There's always something there to look into. And I feel like people like David Croft have more to say about the intricacies of the sport, but that's my perception.
I'm not going to disagree with any of that. I think there are many ways to consume Formula One. And whatever way you want to consume it, choose your poison. That's absolutely fine. I'm not going to say to anyone that they're wrong out there. But all I would say is if you think the sight of cars going at 200 miles an hour plus
is boring,
or doing 170 miles an hour through maggots and beckets, or showing the most supreme engineering challenge in the hands of some of the most talented human beings ever to grab hold of a steering wheel. Where at tracks where you're millimeters away from ruining your afternoon for 70 odd laps in a race. If you think that's boring, I can't help you. I really can't.
I choose a different sport, basically.
I know I don't want people to choose a different sport, Karun. I'd like people to be watching on a Sunday afternoon, but I can't help you if you think that's boring. It is so easy to run with a herd here and say, "Oh, it's boring because Max keeps winning." Why not marvel at the record, at the excellence, at the consistency, and to be that good for so long? I couldn't do it.
None of us could.
Karun couldn't do it. He got one more race in F1 than Nick de Vries. He was so much better, than some of the drivers out there. But you couldn't do that form of excellence. You know what it takes, Karun, to be that good. Appreciate what we're seeing because we're not going to see it forever.
Yeah, I agree. And look, there's good stories up and down the field, isn't it? I think there's been stuff going on. We started with all the stuff with Aston and their rejuvenation really at the start of the year from where they were. There's stuff going on. I think you'd have to say there have been more boring races than others, but that's been the case since Formula One started in 1950.
Boring's the wrong word.
Every football match, every cricket match going down to the last ball or the last minute. It's just that is sport. Not every match or race is going to be exciting to the end. But on the whole, I think we've had a decent season.
Boring's the wrong word. We've had more straightforward races. Yeah, we've had more races that have panned out to their eventual conclusion a lot sooner than we've had before. But not every race can be Abu Dhabi 2021.
You actually, the word that you bring straightforward is funny to me because if anything, I wish that some of the races were a little less complicated and we had answers sooner and we actually knew what was going on and the FIA was giving us a consistent level of, if anything, that's my wish of just like, we could just calm down a little bit.
Well, that's what Martin said. When he was talking to Natalie after the race yesterday, he said, "I'm actually need to go back and look at that."
Yes,
because there were so many pit stops in such quick succession that actually, as well as anyone sitting in the commentary box, you're trying to keep on top of 20 race stories, as it were, and it's quite hard.
It's like trying to read every book on the shelf in the library in the space of an hour and a half. Honestly, I've not been depressed this season. It has panned out the way I thought it would go, but it's not depressing me because I still find the sight of Formula One cars racing around a track really exciting. Just come and join us more often. Just sit on your sofa and we'll try and get you standing up and cheering by the end.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to talk about Mercedes, and I promise we will start to pick up the pace of these teams. If we're
it's going to be a long day.
Through all 9 of the rest of them.
I might dry out by the time we finish this podcast.
So Mercedes sits second in the Constructors' Championship on 247 points. Karun, for a team that's dominated for so long in the sport, obviously they've now been kind of surpassed by Red Bull in that sense the last couple of years. But is it fair to say they're getting closer, but they're still quite a way off?
Yeah, I mean, I was just doing my numbers for the first half of the season, and last year Mercedes on average were 0.8% off the Red Bull, and this year they were 0.596. So they've improved by a quarter, but it's still not enough. And I think there've been those flashes of brilliance. Lewis's qualifying in Budapest is probably the standout. There have been certain races where they've looked better than others, but actually, historically, they've been at tracks where they've been strong. And I think, on the whole, they've come away from the first 12 races being disappointed. Toto's body language and his interviews with Ted were pretty clear on that front. They were hoping that they've understood their concept at the end of last year. They stuck with their concept. Then they've had this mid-season change, the big upgrade. But it's not really moved them ahead of the midfield pack. They've kind of still stayed in that middle fight with Ferrari and Aston. Aston, if anything, have dropped back a bit, but now McLaren are in that fight. So I think on the whole, Mercedes as a team will be pretty disappointed, despite the fact that I still believe they have the best collective driver lineup in Formula One.
Do you agree, Toni?
Yeah. I have not a lot more to add to that than I agree.
Specifically on the driver lineup.
On the driver lineup, 100%. Yeah. I think they've also got an exciting driver lineup. I think, I won't say like most people. I, for one, definitely want to see Lewis win an 8th championship. I actually I appreciated this weekend seeing Max Verstappen go through the cars and try and make up those points versus starting in first and finishing in first. And I think that was something I always really enjoyed with Lewis, seeing him make his way from the backfield. And similarly, I had that excitement this weekend with Max Verstappen, and I was like, I always find these two drivers actually very similar. So no, I agree with that. Everything.
That driver lineup's keeping him in contention.
Yeah.
Keeping that second place and the distance between themselves and Aston Martin. I worry with Mercedes. Who's wagging these engineering changes? Is the engineering team saying we need to be changing our concept, or is it pressure from those in the cockpit, from Lewis and from George, and that Lewis is a vastly experienced racing driver, and George has got plenty of experience himself. But you want the engineering team to be driving it because they understand engineering and design and aerodynamics way more than the drivers ever will. But I just worry the changing concept. Did it come from the cockpit or did it come from back at base? They're losing staff. Loic Serra is heading off to Ferrari, and they'll miss him. And there have been others that have gone as well. We often see this, don't we? The dynasties dissipate after a while, and those group of men and women that came together to create such an amazing dynasty at Mercedes. Have we now ticked past midnight, and are we starting to wane just a little bit now? If finishing second in the championship is waning just a little bit, then Checo Perez really is going to be worried. No, but there's 8 other teams would love to be in Mercedes' position, but that's Mercedes don't want to be racing for second. But every good thing has to come to an end, and Mercedes' dominance has very much come to an end. It's how they readjust their mindset from here on in.
Karun, are you seeing enough this season to make you believe that, say, next year, we're going to have Lewis going for another 8th championship again? Have you seen enough this year that if you were Lewis Hamilton, would that give you confidence in the project, in the Mercedes team?
Well, no. I mean, the reality is they're a long way behind Red Bull, aren't they? I'm with Tony in the sense that I'd like to see Lewis win that 8th championship. Crofty and I were in the commentary box in Abu Dhabi 21, and we thought it was going to happen on that day, and we all know how that unfolded. And I think, I'm one like these guys. I think I admire greatness, and it'll be amazing to be involved in the sport when we see someone break that record. I remember being there when Michael won his 7th, and it was incredible. But the reality is the gap between them, the chasm between Mercedes and Red Bull right now is so big that unless they unlock a huge amount of untapped potential for next season, it's going to be hard for them to close that gap. But what I will say on the upside, Aston Martin and McLaren in more recent times have shown that big gains are possible in the modern era of the sport, which honestly, I didn't think you would ever see those big leaps that we've seen from those 2 teams in particular. Maybe, I think if they understand where the fundamental faults lie, and a lot of it is to do with just where you run the rear ride of the car, from what I understand. Mercedes, they've always, in the previous generation, let's say before 2022, always ran a completely different rear ride and the aero map completely differently to Red Bull. Then when the rules changed, we had the whole bouncing thing, and they've never found a sweet spot in terms of just where to run the rear ride. And that, for people who don't know, that energizes the front wing and just, opens up a whole load of setup options and aero options in terms of where you could run the car. And that means Red Bull, for example, who have found that sweet spot, are competitive at every range of circuit, not just a Budapest here or, the odd track here and there. And I think they need to understand how to get their entire concept into a sweet spot that works on all 24 tracks. And then once you've found that baseline, you can add downforce and add performance and go from there. But they've really got to knuckle down and see, what comes out in testing for 2024.
I guess they'll be already working on that car.
Well, they definitely are.
Yeah,
every team is already well underway with their concepts and in the sim as well with their 2024 car.
Extraordinary, isn't it, when you think about the evolution of F1 and how literally 9 months before that car gets on track in Bahrain next in 2024, they're working on it now.
Yeah, not helped by having so many races these days as well. It's like it's a proper revolving door.
When does anyone get any holiday?
Well,
you don't.
You get 2 weeks in the summer.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
But it's more a case of when does anyone get a time to properly evaluate and test the concepts that are coming through. That's, I think, where some of the teams are struggling. Fine if you start off well, but there's so much demand, race after race after race after race, week in, week out, that they just haven't got the time or the staff to do the proper evaluation.
And it creates a backlog, doesn't it? Of just like we're getting so far behind, we've got so much more to catch up that it just feels like there's no room for us to actually catch up and do the necessary work. And I know this is a Formula One podcast, but it was interesting that we've just had like the season closer of Formula E. And so we've had all of the races through January, and I'm not saying this should be with F1 before everyone comes at me, but we've had January through now what are we, like August, and then that's it. And so it feels like it feels exciting for the teams to then be able to like, okay, well, we're taking a few weeks off, but we're going straight into 2024 season, but we actually have the time to prep for that season, to prep on the cars, to do the changes.
I was talking to Andrea Stella, who was a fascinating man to sit and have a chat to, and I think has really grown into that team principal's job at McLaren this year. Patient, knowledgeable, and has time to see the bigger picture. But he was saying, look, our upgrades, if they work, brilliant.
Yeah.
If they don't, well, we can't spend too much time this year trying to chase the performance because we are going to undo all the good work for next year as well. And because of cost cap and because of the wind tunnel restrictions and the spending, blah, de blah, de blah, we just haven't got time to dive deep into these upgrades if they don't work. And even if they do work, we probably still haven't got time to start chasing performance out of this because it's going to detract so badly from what we need for next year as well. I'm not quite sure that's what Formula One should be about.
Well, that wasn't why the cost cap got brought in, was it?
The cost cap was to stop teams spending obscene amounts of money.
But it feels like is it not limiting development for midfield teams?
The cost cap is limiting many things in Formula One. Staff recruitment is being affected by it because teams just can't pay the money that businesses outside of Formula One can pay because the cost cap isn't going up and inflation is quite high. There is a brain drain, as it were, in Formula One with people leaving the sport to go and work elsewhere. Chief financial officers, I'm sure, are spending the summer shutdown scratching their heads thinking, I hope we've got everything right. It is a hugely complex piece of mechanism that does anyone really truly understand? And I just think it's being managed badly as well. Why are we waiting a whole year to have the auditors bring out the results? Do it quarter by quarter so teams know what's going on and can make adjustments.
Yeah.
I was shocked when I asked the teams how they were planning, how they were mapping the budgets and the money. I was like, are you checking this on a monthly basis, bi-weekly? And they're like, oh no, we look at the end of the year. I'm like, how? How does that work? And the tech isn't there for them to constantly see all the spending. Like it is done retroactively, which makes no sense.
Yeah. Go on, Karun.
I think that's, I'm not sure that's entirely the case. It is audited on a, if anything, on a weekly basis, I think.
Really?
Yeah, in the sense internally. Are you talking about
internally, but not externally? The FIA don't do it on a.
There's no mechanism to be able to say, I think we're going up, or we're spending too much here and there, and you should slow down. Is there?
From an outside.
Yeah, from an outside perspective.
Right. Yeah. No. I think that's because you have to decide. Here's your part. This is how you divvy it up. So you have to internally decide. But that's the way that
grown-ups and
businesses. Well, that's why any of our businesses, you file annual accounts, isn't it? So, you plan your spend across the year. I think that part's not too unusual. Look, on the whole, I think the cost cap is a positive, though. I think in principle, I get the reasons why we have the cost cap. I also understand the challenges of policing it accurately. The one thing I think, Crofty, I would disagree with you is in terms of pay, because actually, if you contrast what somebody in Formula One is paid, an engineer in a particular role, or a mechanic, or anybody in that garage who's covered under the factory who's covered under cost cap, you compare that with any other form of motorsport, IndyCar, Le Mans, Formula E.
No, but this is where you're being short.
No, hang on, let me finish.
No, you're right. You're right in terms of motorsport, but you're being short-sighted because people are leaving motorsport.
Also, you compare with Jaguar Land Rover, or you compare with Nissan or anyone in the road car industry, and Formula One people are paid a premium. If somebody doing a similar, let's say, a reliability engineering role in Formula One versus the road car industry, are paid a premium in F1.
Will you talk to the teams that are struggling to recruit then?
They are struggling to recruit because they're trying to fit it in within the numbers they've got, because they don't want to get rid of people. They're being, the big teams are being forced to come down to a cap. and they're struggling to get people to fit in this little bit of spare budget they've got, right? That's the thing.
No, but they're also struggling to fill the gaps that have been left by people, wanting out. So many race you know full well that not everyone wants to go to every race these days. So trying to find people to do that it is hard.
But that's not a cost cap.
That's not that's a very different scenario. But cost cap will stop the sport attracting the people that's attracted in the past. They will go off to other industries, not just road cars. There's a lot of synergy between the space program, between aerospace as well, and Formula One. There's a huge amount of synergies out there, and team principals are telling me we are starting to see problems on this.
Yeah.
So do you think we should get rid of the cost cap then?
Yes, I think we should get rid of the cost cap as it stands currently, and we should turn around and say, right, let's be honest about this. The intentions of the cost cap were pure and to stop people spending obscene amounts of money. And lots has gone on to try and hide things outside of the cost cap.
Yep.
TD45, Nicholas Tombassis has said, right, we're going to clamp down on all these parts that turn up at tracks that have got a bit of water on them because they've been designed for a boat or whatever. That's just me being a bit funny, by the way. But what we should do is just turn around and say, realistically, your cost cap's set at $140 million without the top three earners and without the drivers. So you've got $250 million a year, full stop. Or 300 million or whatever, if the commercial side of things needs to get taken into consideration. Stop having commercial outside of cost cap because you can hide things there as well, and just have a set fee. Make it simple. Everyone can understand it, and if you go over that fee, then we're going to come down on you massively hard.
By points, not just money. Points.
Not $7 million and a wind tunnel restriction. You're going to get for every 10,000 you've gone over the cost cap, we'll take a point off you.
Well, I think the penalty that they gave Red Bull, they should have looked at how much ever was the overspend. I think 1.8 million or something, and just immediately you say, well, whatever you overspend, double that gets taken away from next year's cap. So they should have had 3.6 removed from this year's cap.
But then you'll get massive redundancies, because if you start taking, look, say a team has overspent by 10 million, which is possible with this TD45 that's come in, that's looking at areas outside of F1 that might be influencing what's going on in F1 within a team. If you overspent by 10 million, there's a $20 million cost cap penalty. That's going to lead to redundancies, and we don't want to see that.
Is the solution not, and this might be idiotic, but lesser races and more teams on the grid?
Oh, Tony, you not understood this whole where the money comes from thing, have you?
So Tony there stating to the world, I haven't got shares in Liberty Media.
No, but if the whole reason is, if we look all the way back about why it was brought in, was to lower that level the playing field just ever so slightly. I feel if you bring in more teams, yes, it's going to take more time. But also if you allow the teams to develop the cars properly and spend the money where they need to, i.e. less time on the road running from one continent to another. I don't know. I'm not saying it's the perfect solution, but when I keep going back to why did we introduce the cost cap to start off with?
I don't think less races are going to happen. I would hope we're going to get two more teams, because I do want to see two more teams on the grid. I think we need that variety, and if we are going to have job losses because of cost cap, then some of those get absorbed within the new teams as well.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question, Matt?
Yeah.
Are we still talking about Mercedes here?
Well, we have gone on a bit of a tangent. We are 40 minutes in. Yeah, we have gone on a little tangent. But, actually a very fascinating one.
I'm really sorry, but I think, look, cost cap is going to be the big story going into the second half of the season. And all these reports at the moment, 3 teams have gone over the cost cap. Nobody knows. The auditors have only just finished their jobs. The teams submit their accounts, think that they've done a great job and they're all under the cost cap. Then the FIA check it against what's allowed and what isn't, and then come back to them and say, yes, you're okay, or no, you've overspent. And everything I'm told by the FIA at the moment is the timescale is exactly the same as last year. So Singapore.
Yeah.
That's when we'll start to find out a few more things.
Okay. Well, let's park it until Singapore. But come Singapore,
Oh, yeah.
we'll.
It's a big story.
That will dominate. Yeah, it will dominate the Formula One news agenda. Okay, let's move it on. So we've done Red Bull and Mercedes. Let's talk about Aston Martin, who sit third in the Constructors' Championship. Karun, Alonso was on the podium for six out of the first 8 Grand Prix. What's happened to Aston Martin over the last few races? Why are they not still fighting at the front?
Well, initially there was a theory about when the construction of the Pirelli tire changed that they struggled, but I think that's been sort of battered away a bit. I just think at the start of the year they just started off with a very, very quick and competitive car, but as the year's gone on, the likes of McLaren and Ferrari and Mercedes have added performance, and Aston haven't quite been able to keep that performance trajectory, in terms of updates and upgrades. I think Ferrari at the start of the year were terrible in terms of tire wear. They could still qualify. If you look at the qualifying performances between Alonso and Leclerc or Sainz for that matter, they were about par, but in the races, they just go backwards. They have started to get on top of that. Look at Spa, for example, yesterday. Leclerc's race pace was very strong, and he was managing the race, and he managed the gap to Lewis and to Fernando, and I think they have got on top of their tire wear issues, whereas the start of the year. So that flattered Aston a bit. I think Mercedes got to testing, thought they'd understood their concept and were going to build on last year, and they weren't. And I think then they got lost. And again, that flattered Aston a bit. So, yeah, but look, I think on the whole, Alonso at Spa, they made some setup tweaks. Having had a couple of tough weekends at Silverstone and Budapest where they were subpar, unlocked a bit of performance, finished 5th, and now they're back in that fight. They'd sort of slipped back to being 5th best team, and now it seems they're at least in that little fight again. So on the whole, still a very, very strong start to the season.
Okay. Do you know what? Unless anyone's got anything else to add to Aston Martin,
I would add to Aston Martin that for the second half of the season, I want to see the Lance Stroll back that turned up in Bahrain.
Yeah.
Because I think he's lost his way a little bit. I think he's lost his mojo. And whatever's happened, Lance just doesn't seem to be as motivated now as he was at the start of the season. And I do wonder, are we approaching a time when he's the one driver on the grid that you think you're guaranteed a job as long as your dad is there? And we've never actually talked about contracts for Lance Stroll. We've never looked at his future elsewhere. But I just have a little feeling that in about a year and a half's time, Lance Stroll will race his last race in Formula One and might go off and do something else.
Wow.
Because I think he's losing his mojo. I don't think Formula One was the sport he wanted to go into when he was younger. I mean, he was a massive tennis talent when he was younger, one of the best youngsters in Canada at the time. And I just wonder if he might go off and find something that fulfills him more and brings more excitement to him. I'm not saying he's not enjoying driving in Formula One. I think there are times he is, but I think I look at him sometimes and think, you want to be doing something else, don't you?
Hard sport to do if you are not fully, your heart's not fully into it. Not, this is not exactly where you want to be doing.
And I think his dad will realise, as chairman as well,
it's a business, isn't it?
That it's a business, and I need 2 drivers.
Yeah.
So if he's not getting the results, I think an easy decision is made.
Yeah. Okay, Aston Martin, done. That was pretty good, guys. That was 5 minutes.
Should we go back to the costume?
Karun, I know you've got to leave fairly soon.
No, we'll power on.
Okay, we'll power on. All right, fine, great. Let's talk Ferrari. Crofty, I'm going to come to you on this one. 4th in the Constructors' Championship.
Yep.
191 points. They're sort of just about there or thereabouts with Aston Martin. I think Mercedes are a fair chunk away ahead of them. It's been quite a topsy-turvy season, hasn't it, for Ferrari? Is that a fair assessment? And I wonder, Do they know sometimes when they get to a race if they're going to be quick? And sometimes when they're not as quick as they say they. Do you know what I mean? There seems to be like.
I think they know they're going to be
predictable.
I think they know they're going to be quick. I just wonder sometimes if they know how they're going to run the race and make it as quick as they possibly can. They say all the right things beforehand, and then something seems to happen occasionally in races that they go back to the filing cabinet of strategy and pick out the wrong bit of paper. I spoke to Charles Leclerc in Spa. Spa's great, by the way, Tony. For there's the stairs that go from the bottom paddock to the top paddock. Yeah. You catch up with people on those stairs, and you have
There's no escape.
There's no escape. and I was blocking Charles Leclerc's route; he couldn't get anywhere. And we had a really good chat at the start of the weekend. One thing really struck me is that he totally believes in what Fred Vasseur is doing at the team. He's look, I've got faith in Fred. I've known him for so long. I fully back everything he's trying to do. But you could see, as he was biting his tongue at a few of the questions, that he's not totally on board with some of the decisions that are being made, some of the things that are happening behind the scenes. They've lost Laurent Mekies now. He's gone and replaced by someone who's been at Maranello for many years. But we remain to be seen how Diego takes on that deputy team principal's role. They still haven't replaced Mattia Binotto, as that technical leader. Fred's still got an awful lot of work to do, and I'll go back on a limb again. I wonder how long, and this is not from this conversation that I had with Charles the other day, I wonder how long he'll be patient with Ferrari and whether he might find that there's somewhere else that he can go. Maybe, if there's a gap, an Aston Martin in 2025, which would be a really, really attractive proposition given what will be happening with Honda from the following year for them.
I actually can't wait for him to be impatient. That's what I've been wanting from Charles Leclerc. Is like, speak up, stop. We've got to have he's got to have like those Max Verstappen moments as well of just. Like,
it's difficult for him, Tony, isn't it? Because Ferrari have paid for his career so far. He has been a Ferrari man, and he wants to make it work with Ferrari, but he's too good a talent.
But that
to
I owe
not
you.
be getting the results that
That's it.
we think he deserves.
Yeah.
Either that, or put a sprint race in every single weekend.
And
When there's a sprint race, he's on the front row and he gets the podium.
And he does well.
Tony, what about the driver pairing? Obviously, we've just spoken about Charles there, but Carlos as well.
Yeah.
Because it's an exciting pairing, isn't it? But I mean, you have to say, Carlos still doesn't feel like he's quite up to the level of Charles, certainly on the last couple of seasons.
It's weird. Ferrari, I might get a lot of hate for this, but Ferrari is one of those teams that doesn't bring out a lot for me. I found Carlos Sainz way more exciting as a driver when he was at McLaren than where he is right now at Ferrari. I find them a lackluster pairing. I think we have moments where you see greatness, but for this whole season, I keep saying this. I keep going, oh, Ferrari. Didn't pay any attention to Ferrari. Oh, Ferrari. And that's weird because they're up there. They did great this weekend. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, they did pretty good. So I don't know where I stand on Ferrari. Ferrari's hasn't always been a bizarre one, but for the last few seasons, I've just been like, eh.
Yeah.
Which I want to see more from both of them, especially Charles Leclerc, but Carlos Sainz as well is a phenomenal driver. I mean, they all are.
Yeah.
But I definitely found him more exciting when he was at McLaren, strangely.
Yeah, interesting. Maybe it was their good social media content. I don't know.
It was the bromance.
The bromance with Lando. All sorts of reasons as to why.
Even the on-track battles, I find myself when I'm watching the race not focusing on Ferrari, and I think it's part of what Crofty was saying of just like they come in so confident, they come in so optimistic, and every single time it feels like there is just something.
I will stick up for them. Canada. I thought that was a great recovery in Canada from their qualifying. And I thought, in hindsight, they got the strategy absolutely bang on.
And look how exciting it is when they do. But the problem is that's once every 12 races.
Yeah.
We've got 2 blue moons in August, apparently. Such a shame there's no racing.
Yeah, you never know. Very good. Okay, good pace with Ferrari there, guys. Let's move on to McLaren.
So, have you been taking lessons from Ted Kravitz?
No.
Have you become the headmaster today?
Yes, and using my watch like he does in the Notebook to keep count of how long it's been.
Yeah, but your watch is worth at least 1 million times more than Ted's. He's been wearing this knockoff Casio digital watch that he's had for years.
Yeah, well, that still does the job.
So he says.
Says the man whose heart rate is good. Anyway, right, let's move on to McLaren. And Karun, I'm going to come to you on this one. Was Spa kind of a little bit of a crash back down to earth for the papaya-coloured team?
No, I think it's just a unique circuit, isn't it? And choosing the downforce package at Spa is more critical than at any other track on the calendar, Baku included. I think because this is the only one where you have such a contradiction between the first and third sectors versus the middle sector of the lap. And also that you've got this weather factor. The forecasts are so unpredictable. You can't tell there's going to be rain at some stage, and they hedged their bets that it was going to be raining for more of the weekend. Unfortunately, Sunday ended up being dry for them. We had rain in the morning, but it wasn't the case later on in the day. They went with a higher downforce package, and Lando got mugged. But because he had the higher downforce package, it enabled him to do that extra long stint on the soft tires, manage the softs, and actually end up 7th, which somewhat surprised him considering the first two stints of the race. So no, I think look at the highs they had in qualifying, and Piastri, as I touched on earlier, I thought did a super job in the dry qualifying, because you got DRS, which obviously helps you. So no, I don't think it's a crash down to earth. I think on the whole, they've done an amazing recovery. I think it is the best. I was trying to think about this before the podcast because I knew you'd ask me about McLaren at some stage. I think it's the best in-season turnaround we've seen since Jordan in 1998.
Wow.
In contrast to where they were at the start of the year, they were genuinely one of the slowest, if not the slowest cars at certain Grand Prix early in the year.
Yeah, Tony, you're nodding
No,
your head.
I love that comparison back to '98. I agree. It's been fun also to see both of the drivers. It's always fun when you see a driver get that, oh, this is the car I needed. I can now go and do what I know I can do on track. So for both of the drivers, it was fun. But it was also just great to see Oscar Piastri. I think this was, his first big moment. Shame that he obviously can, not totally his fault, but couldn't keep that for Sunday. But honestly, it just, the recovery. Again, that's what I mean by Formula One is exciting because 5 weeks ago, we would not be saying this about McLaren, and we really truly didn't know if they were going to be able to turn the ship around, and they truly did, based on the packages and the changes they brought to the car, and that I find exciting, and also just great to see the drivers actually excited by going racing again.
Spring in their step.
There you go.
Their hand was forced a little bit with their downforce package. I think their medium downforce package didn't work particularly well at Spa, so they had to go with the higher downforce. That then helped them in the wet and on a drying track. I thought Oscar Piastri, the way he drove in the tricky conditions from wet to dry, Tom Stallard, his race engineer, so Jenson Button territory, and it very much was Jenson Button territory, and I think show why a lot of us feel Oscar Piastri is very much the real deal for the future and one absolutely to be watched out for. They have turned it around brilliantly. It is great to see McLaren back on the up again, and just adding another dimension to that midfield battle. So do you know what? Well done, Zach Brown, for making the changes behind the scenes. Seidel went, and the promotion of Andrea Stella wasn't exactly a revolutionary promotion. But it was the right promotion for McLaren, and I think they will continue to go from strength to strength.
Now, funny you mention the Andrea Stella coming in, being made team principal. A team that has had another topsy-turvy weekend is Alpine, because it seems like it's a bit of a revolving door. But everyone seems to
from the management getting it right to Alpine
to maybe the management getting it wrong. I mean, Tony, what have you made of the changes at Alpine over this weekend, and maybe
one?
Even the timing of it, like being at a race
and announcing it
at a race, and then I saw on Twitter the images of Otmar leaving the track today. It's quite sad.
I could be so wrong here, so I'll look to the experts, but it feels like in Formula One there really isn't the perfect or great time to make any of these announcements. I also find that in today's world with social media, if you've made a decision, you might as well get it out the door, because else the rumour mills just start, and I think that's probably even worse. So the timing, I always find timings of announcements in Formula One 8 times out of 10 just like the wrong time, but that's just because there probably isn't a good time. My biggest fear in F1 has always been when there is an absolute lack of consistency from the leadership level. Because I always wonder what that does for the drivers when they see the chaos up top, and what that does to you from a mental performance, like getting into the car knowing you have one job to do, but that at the top it's like it's all shuffling around. And I do think I had this question a couple of months ago, last year actually, looking at all the changes that we saw with Williams, of just like the amount of venture capital money that's coming into the sport, how fast they're expecting return on their investment. And I do think Formula One is one of those sports that just takes time. If you're in it and you're investing in something, you're in it for the next decade or 2 or 3 decades. You can't expect a return on your investment in 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And so that's always my biggest fear of how fast the sport is moving these days, of, hey, this is going to take time. And I think it's the same for the change management and leadership. But also, if something's not working, that, again, it's like this weird paradox. If something's not working, you might as well change it. But I do worry for both Ocon and Pierre of just like what that means on the chaos up top.
Yeah.
I'm curious to see where they go from this and what they're actually going to build as a team. But no, it was mad. I mean, you had, what was the change with Laurent Rossi a couple of weeks ago?
Yeah.
I'd rather it happen all at once than like a trickle effect of just like every week there's something else happening. I think that feels. But those images of Otmar Safnauer, it broke my heart a little bit.
Yeah, poor Otmar. Karun, sorry, I was gonna come to you on this. Do you think Otmar has not been given enough time, because he thought he was on a 100 race, if you like, a 100 race plan, right? 100 races to get Alpine to the front of the grid. He's obviously had 33 races. Do you have sympathy with him and what he was trying to do at Alpine?
I do a bit, but I think I don't really want to talk about Otmar by himself, because I think we have to consider the way that massive wave of 3 heavy hitters has come at one shot. You've lost Alan Permain, who has been in the team for 34 years. Pat Fry, who seems to have left on his own accord rather than being pushed, unlike Otmar and Alan. And he's gone to Williams, which is a great signing for Williams, by the way. And that is, I think that loss of all 3 of them is a big loss. And I think Tony's point about lack of direction and leadership from the top, a big change of leadership is a bit of a worry. I mean, to me, if you look at the people they've got rid of, it's people who are from an operational and trackside perspective, which means that what they're trying to say is that's where the problems were, and therefore the likes of Matt Harmon, the chief designer, and Bruno Famin, who's come in and taken over, who ran the engine department, that side of it is all fine. The troubles were operationally, and I'm not sure that's necessarily the case. The reality is, they are in Formula One at the moment, they are the 6th best team. They are the 6th fastest car, but they are the 3rd biggest global automotive manufacturer. That is just not good enough. And where my concern comes in is, are they going to be bringing in more management and more people from outside of motorsport, outside of Formula One? Already, if you look at the people who are in their planning departments, for example, at Enstone and things like that, they brought them in from road car industry, people from Rolls-Royce and places like that. And you do wonder now with Renault corporate maybe taking a stronger hold in terms of running that team, is it going a bit like Toyota from 20 years ago? Is it going down a sort of non-F1 way and sort of going down the corporate way, which I'm not convinced is going to work.
The entente cordiale, excuse my French on this one, it is not in existence between Viry and Enstone.
Tony, you speak French, I don't, but
that's close to perfection. I'll give you that.
Mais oui, mais oui.
Spa effect.
I don't get it. I asked the question to Bruno Famin in the press conference. You've been 2 weeks in the job. Is this your idea, or are you carrying out orders from above? He didn't really answer that one, to be fair. I said, what are your targets? He said wins and championships, which seems far-fetched given where the team are at the moment. And I said, how are you going to do that? Why is it all the problems at Enstone when your engine's the worst on the grid, and they're talking about a balance of power equalisation for it? Because the engine is not good.
Yep.
And he says no. Well, the chassis department, the Enstone, they need to be getting better too. Karun and I have said this many times since a production meeting in 2019 before a race where I said in the office, can I just ask a stupid question? I just don't get Renault at the moment. I don't get what they're trying to do in Formula One. I don't get why the team's called Alpine. Yeah? As far as I'm aware, you can't buy Alpine cars in America. Yeah? I think you can buy Renaults. Yeah. Why would you buy a Renault over a Kia or whatever? Because Renault's got Formula One technology in it. You know, it's a family car with Formula One technology. Push that to the marketplace. That
or Nissan.
Or a Nissan or whatever.
What a massive name.
And that makes more commercial sense than Alpine. Bruno Famin sat in a press conference and minutes after the team had just got rid, by mutual consent or whatever, of their 34-year standing sporting director and the team principal, with Pat Fry announced the previous day, and all he could talk about was the Alpine motorsport program. Nobody wanted to hear that, and it wasn't important to anybody except Renault and Alpine and that corporate top brass.
And the most damning thing, Crofty, of that weekend, I thought, was Alain Prost's column.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, France's only world champion, and it was pretty damning, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But can you disagree with what Alain Prost is saying?
No.
And that's the thing, you can't. And I feel really sorry. There are some great people at Enstone. And that performance, Pierre Gasly's third place in the sprint, I was so pleased that they had something to celebrate that weekend. And I think Pierre acknowledged that this was for the whole team. But some bridges need to be built, not burned there. And I think there needs to be, a way forward where both sides, Enstone and Viry the engine, where they all need to feel part of the same team and feel that those making the decisions in France are not going to push thunderbolts like this at them. Because Otmar's position has been under threat since Miami. But give the guy time. Otherwise, do it quietly during the summer break, and then come back with people in place at the next race. To do it on the Thursday of a Grand Prix, PR-wise, made no sense to me either.
All right, well, that concludes Alpine. Karun, I know you have to go, so we'll bid you farewell. Thank you very much for joining us on the screen.
Thank you. Always a pleasure. Nice to see your hair still in place.
Oh, thank you,
8 months into the podcast
and
season.
yours as well. So it's all good. All is well in Formula One hair.
He's not wrong, though. What do you put in that hair?
You really want to? It's a 3-pronged approach.
Oh.
Three-pronged.
Hey, at least we've got a process.
Yeah,
I like this.
Yeah. Well,
prong one.
Prong one. The volumizing mousse.
Volumizing mousse.
Nice. I can't believe we're doing this.
He's angling for a sponsorship here, you know. This.
Absolutely.
Number 2 is the sea salt spray.
I've used that before.
What does that do?
Just get, like when you come out the sea and your hair's a bit salty.
Yes.
Yeah.
That.
That's what you.
Yeah, it's that
in a bottle.
And then a little paste just to kind of
a bit of paste.
Zhuzh it up. Yeah. I can't believe
But what an effect! Yeah. This is where I'm going wrong.
Do you have a 3-pronged approach?
I have the 2-pronged approach.
Well, you're missing one prong.
Try it.
Step out of shower, dry with towel, apply a bit of cream, walk out the door.
Yeah. Well, I bet you it takes less time than me.
Yeah. But look at you getting all the results.
Thank you. Anyway, 4 more teams to get through.
It's like the Sky Sports F1 podcast, hosted by Vidal.
See, there you go. Very smart.
Many hairbrands.
Right. Tony or Guy?
Very good. So we've got Tony, so I guess
he has to be Guy.
Yeah. Right. We've got 4 teams left to go through. What I thought we'd do, we've got Williams, Haas, Alfa Romeo, and Alfa Tauri. All right. Yep. So perhaps instead of going through them one by one, who out of those 4 teams do you back, Crofty, in the second half of the season to have a good second half? Who is going to maybe get out of that final 4 and perhaps push further into the midfield?
I think Williams have the best chance. I think replacing Jost Capito with James Vowles will go above McLaren's choice to promote Andrea Stella as the move of the season. I think James is doing a mega job at Williams. And whilst he'll concede himself there are easy gains to be made given that Williams was so far back, I think he's just put in place some simple routes to improvement, has energised the factory down at Grove, brought in people. Pat Fry, Karun was talking about. It is a super signing for Williams. Is trying to get a capex spend so that they can improve the facilities at Grove, update them, replace some of the machinery that's got a bit old down there. it's a team that can go places with a man who knows what it's like to win championships. And don't think of James Vowles just as a strategist. He has a master's degree in engineering. He understands engineering. He understands strategy, obviously, and he understands management and drivers because he's been working with the young drivers at Mercedes. I think Alex Albon is driving superbly at the moment. Logan Sargent, they're putting no pressure on him whatsoever, and I think he's actually doing a solid job in this his first season. Williams have got the ingredients to make it right. I hope they do, because we want to see Williams return to form. Where I do wonder about the other three, Alfa Romeo, they're in a kind of limbo status at the moment before they become Audi, you feel, yeah?
Yeah. I agree with the Alfa Romeo being a limbo. Williams, it's interesting, the transition that Williams has had in the last 12 to 18 months, really, you look at it and go, that's a place I would like to work. That means nothing in the grand scheme of things, but to what Crofty, you were saying of like all the ingredients, elements are there. There's also an element of slow wins the race. Like, we're going to get all the elements right, and then when we're ready, we're actually going to be able to hit the ground running. So I've been very excited by Williams, and I think everyone, especially people in the UK, want to see Williams back.
Yeah, limbo status at Alfa Romeo. They've had a bad season compared to last year. Their car was underweight at the start of last year, and they had the benefits from that. It was interesting. I was talking to Franz Tost in the paddock when Daniel Ricciardo came in about many things, and he questioned Valtteri's motivation and Kevin Magnussen's motivation at Alfa Romeo and Haas, and he kind of wondered why they were there. And on results, maybe you can see that, but I think they still bring a wealth of experience to those teams that go down very well. Now, by the time this podcast comes out, Kevin Magnussen may well have signed a new contract at Haas. Who knows? Valtteri Bottas will definitely be there next year at Alfa Romeo, and I hope Joe Guan Yu alongside him, because I actually think Joe's a really fine driver, deserves his place there. But what's going on with the transition from Sauber to Audi, I think, is a bit of a distraction at the moment. They're in a bit of limbo status. The true test for that team will be when Audi properly take over, and from 2026 onwards, and you don't hear great reports about where the engine, the power unit stage is at the moment in terms of the research and development. And that probably brings us on to Haas and to AlphaTauri. Haas, fast car over one lap, struggles when the tyres go off. You can't really say much more than that, because that's their season, and they can't get a hold on those problems. Hulkenberg's great to see him back, great to see him motivated, but he's motivated on a Saturday because he knows that Sunday's going to be a bit of a struggle.
Do you think the change that they did of bringing in, replacing the two younger, more novel drivers and bringing in the two that they have now as a combo, do you think that was the best play for Haas? Yeah,
absolutely.
So at least there's not that component to worry about.
They need experience.
Yeah.
The Schumacher and Mazepin, they didn't need experience that year. They just needed to be racing, because the car was so far off the pace. They could have put Max Verstappen in there. They wouldn't have been anywhere near points. But I think they need experience now. And Hulkenberg, look at what he did in Austria. Fine qualifying, brilliant sprint race. Tyres went off once again during the Grand Prix itself, but he's brought home some points for them. AlphaTauri is the one that interests me. Where do AlphaTauri go from here? Yuki Tsunoda's driving okay.
And all their points this year.
And all their points this year. Yeah. Nick de Vries didn't work, but I'd have liked to have seen him given a bit more time. I understand the reasons why, as were explained as to why they got rid of him. And I think Daniel Ricciardo has come in as a motivation, not just for Yuki, but for Checo as well. Yeah. And that seems to have worked in the last couple of races too. But does Daniel Ricciardo want to be racing ready for AlphaTauri next year? Potentially, if AlphaTauri is a much better car. And there's lots of reports that the plan is, under whatever name they're going to be, maybe Toro Rosso once more, that they run this year's Red Bull next year.
Be interesting.
Wow.
Which has happened before.
Yeah. Wow.
Super Aguri ran a year-old Honda, for instance. It works at the start of the season, and you quickly get out-developed. Yeah. But it would definitely work for
where they are right now.
But that's just the paddock rumor as it stands.
They come across also as a team that's willing to move maybe a little slower also to figure out what they need to figure out. It's been fun to see both Yuki. I mean, Yuki did a raced really well this weekend in Spa. It was nice to see. I also wonder, when we were talking right at the start of the conversation about Checo Perez being comfortable, just being like, you're going to be the number 2, so as long as you're comfortable with that, then you might be more successful. I wonder if someone like Daniel Ricciardo is able to have that same mindset shift as well when we think about why he left Red Bull at the beginning. If he can have that same shift and go, you know what, I'm not gunning for world champion, I just want to be a phenomenal number 2 driver, and then maybe, I wonder if he will get to that, or if he's still, when you talk to him.
I don't know the answer to that, but wouldn't that be a real shame?
Yeah.
That if he did, there would have been absolutely no reason to have left Red Bull in the first place.
Exactly that. Which you can't rewrite history, so it's not, but that was the reason why he left.
Do you think if he could, he'd never have left in the first place?
Surely. Yeah. Surely.
It's fine, but don't call me Shirley.
On that bombshell. Yeah, I think that's about. We've got through all 10 teams.
Eventually.
Go us.
Just about. So yeah, well done everyone. Well done, Karun. Thank you for joining us. Summer holidays. You off?
Yes.
Yeah. Where are you going?
I'm actually going on a cruise.
Oh yeah.
I've never done a cruise before, and my kids are so excited because there's 24-hour-a-day food, which they think they're going to go and enjoy. But there's also F1 simulators on the cruise as well. So my 16-year-old, I said, right, you got to pack your swimming shorts, you got to pack your t-shirts, your Hawaiian shirt. Nah, I'm just going to be on the simulator all day.
Gloves and
that's all he's going to do.
Tony, what about you?
How big is the cruise ship?
It's fairly large.
Cruises are weird because if you want to escape someone, if you meet people that you like, it's great. If you meet people on the first day that are a bit awkward, you're like, oh well, there's not a lot of place I can hide.
Well, I've never done it before though, but there's so much for the kids to go and enjoy.
It's incredible, and they can't go anywhere.
Yeah, so they can't go anywhere. They can just go and have some fun. I need to have a lie down.
Yeah,
I think it's been quite exhausting. You on the beach?
No, but I live in California, so I can't complain. Blue skies and sunshine is my default. I know that's really cool to say, as it's absolutely throwing it down in Europe right now.
It's on the beach every day.
Wow.
So I can't complain about that.
Yeah.
Although I'm a pale redhead, so being in the sunshine doesn't really suit me.
Where does a Californian go for a summer holiday then?
There's a lot of places.
Alaska?
The incredible thing about California is you've got the seaside, the mountains, and the deserts all really close. So you could drive up and do a Palm Springs desert trip, or you go into the mountains. There's a lot. There's still some skiing happening because we've had a very weird winter. I mean, I feel like the weather's all over the place right now. But no holidays planned. This was kind of I came down for 2 weeks. I'll be in Europe for another week, which is going to the south of France for 3 days. So there you go. There you go.
And your summer season in Blackpool?
Yep, you know me.
I'm here all week. Matt Baker with me 3-pronged hair.
No, I am going to go on holiday, but thankfully for everyone at home, we've got some great podcasts lined up with yourself.
Yes,
we're going to do a little Q&A with you, and we've also got one with Danica Patrick as well. So we'll keep you. There might not be F1, but we'll still keep your whistle wetted, as it were, with Formula One throughout the August break. Anyway, we all need a holiday. I don't mean,
3-pronged approach.
Podcast
approach. Like Matt's hair.
Thank you very much for joining us. We hope you enjoyed it, and we will be back next Tuesday. We hope you can join us then. Bye for now.